what they were basically going to be saying. So I thought I would just share something that was sort of specific to me. So anyhow, it's started off. I've had a great life. My mom said this many times, especially over the last couple of years, and it was very difficult for her. When you go back to the early 50s, when my mom was 15, and she was raised in a Catholic family, blue-collar family, a good, hard-working family, but oftentimes their prosperity meant a butter sandwich or a stale bread soup, or, it was not an easy life for them. And she fell in love with a surgeon whose family was part of the Anglican Church.
Surgeon's son.
Yes, fell in love with the surgeon's son. My dad was no surgeon. I'm pretty sure.
Butchered a few jokes now.
But there was a lot for them to have to overcome, and my mom said it many times that there were a lot of things that they were up against in terms of acceptance by the families and everything like that. But their love helped them to get through it, and it created a love story that would last over 60 years. And I'm sure that there's others that have sort of elaborated on some of these things so far, and it's important to understand this in order to appreciate all the different speeches that people have. But each of us kids had our own story to tell, Not everybody had the same relationship with mom. I was lucky. I was born in 1963, and for 5 years, she was mine. The kids were in school, and at that point in time, my brother was just on the drawing table of a pharmaceutical plant just outside of Ottawa. And I think most of the people that are laughing the hardest probably know exactly what I'm talking about. I'd bake with her. This was one of our things that we did on L Street. We'd bake, and one of my fondest memories was when she would take the excess dough when she's baking a pie. She'd roll it up and she'd put it into an egg cup for me. And I was talking to her about this in the hospital as well, and she remembered doing that. And I said, like, nowadays, they call children's service for trying to feed raw dough to a kid. But I mean, back then, we ate a big ball of raw dough. It's really nothing compared to some of the things, I guess, that we did back then. But anyhow, and she'd always let me lick the bowl. But after about a couple months of this, she laughed and said, "You stupid ass." And then she taught me how to flush. But I mean, in a lifetime that was really full of a lot of heartache and a lot of diversity. And the stupid ass thing is true. I mean, if anybody knows, I mean, that was our nickname. Five of us. But I mean, a good sense of humor, right to the end. I think it became an important part of us getting through some very difficult times in our life, and but this was my own story here, just in the few years that I had with my mom on L Street while the kids were in school. We would do all kinds of things together, and that's where I first met Clarence. And, you know, and it's an important story, and so it was in the spring of 1966, and I take my orange tractor down to the bottom of the driveway on L Street, and I just happened to look up over my shoulder. You could look up into the clouds above the stucco house on L Street, and I swear I saw a face up in the sky. When I turned back down to the bottom of the driveway, it was a young boy, dark hair, carefully parted on one side, very sharp, leather sandals with Sean, and he told me his name was Clarence. And over the years, I learned a little bit about him, not a whole lot. He was born September 18, 1961. I never really knew too much more about him. He was about a year and a half older, but he always seemed to be so much older than me. And that day he disappeared down into the tree at the end of the driveway. And I was so happy. I went back up and into the house, and I was having lunch with my mom, and I told her all about him. And she poured me a buttermilk, and we used to drink buttermilk. My mom weighed 60 pounds. She had to, you know, but she would feed it to me, and I weighed 60 pounds. And, you know, and she wasn't so surprised by it. We would talk about Clarence every day. She would ask me questions about it, and we would talk about it, and she'd say, it's kind of our little thing, you know, we'll just talk about it. And it was always that way. Everybody seemed to think he was imaginary, so I guess maybe he was. So. But, you know, Clarence would be at all the events and things like that. So, I think we were the only ones that really knew that he was around. He was really there. Anyway, I just wanted to give you that little bit of a description about Clarence so that you can understand that this was a special bond with my mom. And it's not a secret that our house had a certain darkness or melancholy with my dad's illness, and despite this, somehow the love within the family always grew, and we all knew it. I mean, every one of us in the family knew it, that it was still there, and during my public school years, you know, I guess it was just a matter that I just thought everybody had such a great mom. I never thought of her as being any greater than anybody else's mom. I guess that's what teenagers or people sometimes think. They just take it for granted that everybody's got the best mom, I suppose. But prior to my dad passing away, it was a different bond that started in my late teens. My sisters had all got married and moved away. And we had different types of talks than we did with Clarence, and we were dealing with different situations than, you know, there's a lot of different decisions we had to make. And maybe people don't really remember this, but the mom that we've seen for the last few years wasn't always that way. I mean, it was a progression. She was raised in a large family where they weren't necessarily affectionate to each other. You know, there was no affection. My mom didn't show affection a lot of times when we were growing up. It was my dad who was the affectionate one. And you know, and that was, and I was kind of the same way. So my mom and I being stuck in that situation together, it was, we really felt like we were at a loss because we couldn't really help each other. You know, we couldn't really help each other because we didn't, neither of us was very good at being emotional. She would just, you know, say I was a stupid ass, and I would say, or else she would do, well, I can't say because there's a lot of kids here, so. but anyhow, so we struggled through those years, and then Mom met Ron, and, you know, we've heard the stories about Ron, and Ron had been a close friend of Dad and Dwayne back in the 50s. And I mean, really what could only be described as divine intervention, along with a band of supportive children and grandchildren. Mom and Ron both became the greatest parents, grandparents that any of us kids could ever have imagined. And we all love Pop so much. And Mom was there holding him to the very end, his family surrounding him. And only a few weeks prior, Ron had taken me for a drive in the Mercedes that Mom won from the Princess Margaret Hospital. And there's another connection to that. My father had been treated at the Princess Margaret Hospital for a form of melanoma that had been, that was back in the 70s. So that was his connection to the hospital to begin with. And he said he couldn't believe it. They won such an amazing prize. You know, they couldn't believe it. And I told him, it's not luck. And I said to him, I said, most incredible parents, most giving people. I don't know if anybody's known anybody who would do more for other people and never, ever want anything except a thank you for it. And they made themselves that way. And they made themselves both become the very affectionate people that, I mean, my mom wasn't when we were kids. I mean, sometimes my sisters or brothers, they might say, well, no, she was always really affectionate. She wasn't. I'm telling you, she was not always really affectionate. Johnny's got marks on his head from a TV tray incident, you know, and that was just, you know, and that's just, you know, I mean, she wasn't violent towards us. But she, you know, she would just look at you and say, come on, get over it, you know, like crying like a baby. So, but I told him, I said, you know, life repays itself. I said, for everything that you've done, that was not lucky, you know. The things that happen to somebody who goes out of their way to help. I mean, almost everybody in this room has a story about something that Pops, that Mom did for them, you know. So anyhow, but after he passed away, Mom really picked up where they'd left off, and the grandchildren weren't kids anymore, and they put into practice a lot of the lessons that they had learned from their amazing grandparents, and we see it all the time still. I mean, it's what brought kids up to Grandma's house every Monday, and it's all part of the same thing. And I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of weekends with Mom last month. I don't get down nearly enough, and over the past years, but you know, we've always had a certain bond. And Thursday night